Food is such an important part of Mexican culture. It's just such a binding element of who we are. I grew up in a family where food was the glue of everything. Just sharing a table brings people together in a way that few things do. I never set out to become a chef. I opened Contramar. And it sounds ridiculous, and that's what it is. I opened a restaurant, and it was an experiment that was so successful that I turned it into my career. Camachito, buenos días. Buenos días, muchachos, ¿cómo están? Qué rico. ¿Va a haber chicharrón en salsa verde?
Sí.
¿Pediste chicharrón? Qué bueno. Mi favorito. When we opened Contramar 22 years ago, it really was a different world. Contramar was funnily enough, a very farm-to-table restaurant in Mexico City, in a context where that was not the popular way to go. I think that the common thread in my food has to do with caring about each part of what I do. It's the care in what ingredient you choose, it's the care in how you treat it, it's the care in how you present it. And I believe that this spirit that has always been part of my household somehow was translated to the restaurant because I wanted to welcome people as I would to my house. And I believe that that's what makes the restaurant special. So this is what I try to carry through the restaurants. Contramar, Entremar, Cala, Onda, and everything that I am a part of because it's what really matters to me. My mother's Italian, my father's Mexican, and they met in the United States. And so I grew up in sort of these three countries. But now we're going to talk about Mexican food, so I'm going to focus on my Mexican part. In my masterclass, I want to give you a taste of a few things that are very loved from my restaurants. And I also want to teach you a few recipes for cooking what I cook at home and what we eat in Mexico City. I'm going to teach you how to make a few delicious salsas. I'm going to teach you how to make pescado a la talla. It's our most popular dish at Contramar for sure. It was the first dish on the menu, tuna tostadas, a dish that is on so many menus in Mexico and abroad. Contramar was the first restaurant to serve the tuna tostada, I'm very proud to say. We're also going to make a quesadilla and we're going to fry it. I'm going to teach you how to make aguachile, tamales. We're gonna make tacos al pastor. And I'm gonna teach you how to make tortillas. And I'm gonna teach you about corn. I'm gonna teach you how central to the Mexican diet corn is. It's really difficult to think of a Mexican meal without thinking about corn. It's sort of like thinking about a French meal without bread. It's been the main ingredient in every meal of every person that has a little bit of Mexican blood. I'm gonna share stories about my experience as a cook and things that have to do with Mexican culture, the way we use ingredients that pave the way for a very, very complex cuisine that has just become richer and richer through the years. I want to give you basic guidelines from which to start, points of reference that you have to know in order to then be able to improvise. I'm a big supporter of cooking with what you have around you. If you are into sustainability and making food out of the best possible ingredients, you're in for a good surprise. Yo soy Gabriela Cámara y esta es mi masterclass. In Mexico, corn has this sacred aspect. It's the sustain of the population of this part of the world. Frankly, the most important ingredient in food. And in America, it's just a large crop. And it's mostly one variety. You know, when you have corn on the cob, it's this yellow, sweet, delicious, and you have organic varieties, which are more delicious than others. But you don't have this process of drying the corn and then grinding it, making a dough from which you make tortillas or tamales or atole or all these other things that come from the process of cooking dry corn. Drying the corn is the only way to actually keep the corn. So we have a tradition of saving the best seeds, planting them before the rainy season, you know, preparing the land, planting them, and then harvesting them in the fall, in the early fall, so that you have, again, your crop for the next year. We have, I think, cataloged around 60 varieties of heirloom corn, and they keep on discovering new species and new families. So here we have a few varieties of Mexican heirloom corns. And as you can see, we have different colors and it's very varied, very varied. Different parts of the country produce different types of corn. For example, this is a type of Oaxacan white corn. This is a type of blue corn. This is a type of red corn. We do see this really beautiful diversity of colors, diversity of forms. You know how it's a round end, and these are a pointy end. You have maíz cónico, which finishes in like a little cone shape. And then you have the bolita, which ends up being round. And these are sort of colloquial names, but then you have all your scientific names. But I do want you to notice how different all the colors are. Like these corns came from mixing other corns, you know, the white, the red. You have this sort of tie-dyed corn, which isn't tie-dyed, it's just like mixed. This is a more transparent, rounder type of corn, which is not as common because, of course, what farmers usually want is a really long and thick corn so that they can get more yield from it. And, you know, it's easy to peel. And what you do is like, you peel it and you get all the grains. This is what you do when you want to get all your seeds. And you have starchier corns that will make for a more fluffy masa, if you will. And it's really fascinating when you go to communities and people use 3 or 4 different varieties of corn in maybe even one special meal. Like they use one for the atole, which is a drink, then they use another one for the tortillas, and then they use another one for a pozole, and then they use another one for making a different, you know, you could have a different preparation. You can have a tlacoyo, you can have a tetela, you can have, these are all shapes of things that you make tortillas with fillings in little packages to eat. I will show you some of these things also. Mostly, it's become very hard to have heirloom corn be cultivated by the communities that have made it possible to now even have it. So there are big efforts in Mexico now to salvage these heirloom corns and to promote the growth of them. But in Mexico, we're moving swiftly into this fast food consumption, and preserving heirloom corns is the antidote for that. So I'm a big promoter of it. So now I'm going to show you how to nixtamalize corn. We're going to use a variety of white corn from Oaxaca. It's called Blanco Comiteco, and it's from a small town called Santa Catarina, Jiquila. And I'm going to show you how to nixtamalize it so we can eat it. Nixtamalizing is a process by which the proteins become readily accessible for humans. This is limestone, which is usually found in nature. It's a stone that is very soft, so people scrape it. And it is calcium hydroxide. And you can find it nowadays easily because it's what's used for pickling. So I have my powder here, and now I'm gonna have my water boiling, and I've already measured this. For a little under a kilo of corn, you use about 10 grams of the limestone, and I'm gonna put it in the boiling water, and I'm gonna mix it in, and I'm gonna make sure you have a milky water where the lime is easily distributed. And I'm gonna put in the corn and basically let it boil. And what I want is for the skin of the corn to be dissolved by this powder, that breaks into it and hence allows the protein to come out so that we can absorb it when we eat it. And this is why corn is not just a starch, it's a starch that has a lot of protein. The little bits of corn that float are the corn it's called maíz vano, which is corn that isn't good. It comes up and it's very easy to spot. You can boil corn and cook it without the limestone and you will get a paste, but it will not hold together. Nixtamalizing it also makes it flexible enough to build tortillas and to have it sort of have a structure, but also flexibility, and it keeps the moisture of the corn. When it's cooked, you can take out the skin and you can actually bite into it and it doesn't break your tooth. It's sort of a pasta al dente. You have to see the uncooked in the middle. What we're gonna do is we're gonna let this boil until you can rip the skin and sort of peel it with your nail. And that's, in the case of this corn, it's gonna take about 20 minutes, 25. If it overcooks, then your masa will not be easy to grind and it will just be a really, really sticky paste. So our corn is ready. This has already been broken into and you can peel the skin. You see the yellow skin has been sort of torn apart and you can get it out easily with your hands. When the skin comes off, you stop the cooking and then you let it sit. Usually people leave it overnight. I like to leave it overnight. It doesn't hurt to have it be a little bit more soaked. And then you rinse it. And after you rinse it, you're ready to grind it. And we're gonna do this right here in the sink. And I wanna wash the corn. You wanna wash it and make sure that it's cold. It feels really soft and it feels like you wanna massage it. You shouldn't rinse all of the limestone out of it because, even if some of it has already absorbed, you want it to be limey in a way that you can taste a bit of it and also that you can have the masa be very flexible. So it's now getting cooler and cooler, so you can get your hands in there. So I'm gonna show you. So the consistency, it's sort of it's nice to touch. It's nice to the touch. And you have all the little pieces of the skin that have peeled, but you want a little bit of it. You don't want to take all of the cal because the cal also, it gives it a flavor and it also allows you to have a masa that is really malleable, which is what you want in masa, right? You want a little dough that holds together. You can eat it. Look, I'll show you. You bite into it and it's al dente. You have a white part in there and you can eat it. It's just sort of raw because what happens is that this is halfway cooked enough so that you can grind it and then you finish cooking it when you make the tamales, when you make the tortillas, when you make every preparation of the corn. This is what you have to start with. This is your basic nixtamalization and then we'll go to doing different things. When my family arrived in Tepoztlan, I was 5 years old. And by the time I was 7 years old, I was mortified that my mother did not know how to make tortillas because every woman in the town of Tepoztlan, then at least, I don't know if now, but then at least, every woman knew how to make tortillas. And women would stand in the kitchen or outside of where people were eating, making tortillas while everybody else was eating. So I asked Victoria, the lady who would come and help us with the cleaning, Victoria, I really need please make tortillas. I want tortillas to be made in my house. So Victoria started making tortillas and I started learning. So she first had me just watch her. And then eventually she let me make a tortilla. And eventually she let me press them. And then after pressing them, she let me put them on the comal So from age 7, I became the resident tortilla maker in my house. You know, I learned early on, but it's easy to learn. It's not that difficult. I'm going to break it down for you. But first of all, I'm going to show you how to make the masa. This is something that you can skip if you are fortunate enough to live anywhere where you can find masa already ground. But I want to teach you how to do it from scratch. So we're going to use now a sort of home size grinder. These are actually very easy to find. They're sort of a home alternative to when you don't have a larger community and a central molino, which is how it's called. So this is our corn that has been rinsed of the water, and I'm gonna put it in the hand mill. So I'm gonna fill it up. I'm gonna add a little bit of water. This is normal water. See, I'm gonna check. I mean, this is still pretty coarse. I'm still gonna grind it a little bit thinner. You could pass it all and then pass it again. That's a way of doing it, which helps. Most people are not gonna go through the hassle of buying the heirloom corn, nixtamalizing it, grinding it. It's sort of a difficult thing. It's a nuisance thing to do at home. But if you're very much into it, you should absolutely do it because the results are very different than finding masarina in the supermarket or online. And there are all these flours that are, in the best of cases, organic corn nixtamalized and dried that you just add water to, and it's called masarina. But I have not found one that is actually very good in terms of how the tortilla tastes and how the tortilla cooks. Because you need more flexibility in the masa. Usually they're kind of dry. If you can't make it yourself, second best is buy fresh masa. Third best is find an organic masarina. Fourth best is buy great tamales and tortillas made with organic heirloom corn wherever you can. If you really are interested in having amazingly good masa, this is what one has to do. You have to go through this. Okay. Okay, here goes more water, which will be messy. Okay, now I'm gonna check on this masa. And this is still coarse, but it's actually nice masa. You can still feel the grain of the corn when you press it. It does come together. You see how it blends together in a nice little paste, but it is still coarse. You can still see the pieces of the corn. I'm gonna leave it like this, and I'm gonna finish the corn that I have here, and then I'm gonna do a second grinding. Okay, so this is coming out nicely. I'm gonna grind it again to get a finer masa, but you can see that I'm getting this consistency of a very unified dough. It's not falling apart. It's still a little bit cracky because it's not as finely ground, but I'm gonna get this in the second milling process. We're getting there. It looks really delicious and it smells nice. It smells of the limestone. It's a special smell that I have learned to love, and you know that it's gonna make for good tortillas. So we're gonna get this to the right consistency, and then I'm gonna show you how to actually make the tortillas on the fire. Usually what traditionally happens in Mexican communities where corn is of great importance, there's a central mill. It's a very simple mechanism. It's a grinder with a small motor that just moves these volcanic stones that rotate, and inside the stones, the corn is ground. You add a little bit of water and you get the right consistency, and you literally get the masa. Ya ven mi obsesión por agarrar todo. Está bueno. Esa es mi parte favorita. Eso. Sí está fuerte la salpicada. Sí está buena. ¿Cómo está este maíz?
Está buenísimo.
Está buenísimo, ¿verdad?
Sí.
Y toda la noche también lo deja, ¿no?
Sí, tiene que reposar toda la noche.
Sí.
Hasta que esté frío, porque si lo molemos
Caliente se hace chicloso.
La masa sale como engrudo.
Engrudo, chicloso. Sí. Now, 22 years after we opened Contramar, one finds so many more places where heirloom corn is celebrated, nixtamalized, ground, and all sorts of tortillas and tamales and things that you make with corn are made. And I'm proud of deciding that when we opened Contramar, we wanted really good corn tortillas. Listo. When we opened Contramar, it was 1998. And at that time in Mexico, it was really difficult in the city to find fresh-made tortillas. People travel distances to go to a particular market where ladies from Milpalta or Xochimilco or rural areas around the city would make their tortillas. So when we opened Contramar, for us, it was really important to have sort of a recreation of a beach palapa in the city. What we wanted is to have tortillas being made there. And that was a sort of an innovative concept in terms of restaurants in Mexico City, in that area of the city. And there's nothing like a fresh-made tortilla. There really isn't. So we started getting corn from Morelos. Morelos is where I grew up in. And decided to do our own masa program. And we always had, it's been a staple of Contramar to have fresh-made tortillas. It was the first thing I learned to cook in terms of Mexican food, which is something I'm very proud to say and to show you. So here we have our fresh ground masa. I also have blue masa and red masa from red corn, which turns into a little bit brownish masa. This is our white masa. So as you see, I've ground it enough so that you have this really pasty consistency. And you're supposed to be able to maneuver it without it sticking too much to your fingers. But it does have to stick a little bit, because if it doesn't stick a little bit, it means that it's too dry and you won't be able to form a tortilla or anything for that matter. So I want to use the white masa to show you how to make tortillas. All the different masas don't only look different, but they actually have different tastes. If you're knowledgeable enough, you can distinguish the different notes in the varieties of corn. I think that as long as you have heirloom corn that is nixtamalized and ground fresh, whatever tortilla you make out of that is going to be superior to anything else that you might find out there. You know, it's like eating bread right out of the oven. It's the start of any good meal. This is a dough ball that it's rather small. The sizes vary in terms of what you're gonna use them for. And then, you know, you have tortillas that are this size, you have tortillas that are this size, and anything in between. And it has to do with traditions of, you know, particular of each region, of each town. In Tepoztlan, for example, tortillas are about this big, and they're usually white corn. At Contramar, I started making smaller tortillas and thicker tortillas because that's what you use in Guerrero on the coast in the Pacific. I would start with balls an ounce big, and I'm gonna show you here. I have a comal, which is a clay comal, and this is what you would usually cook your tortillas in. This would usually be this size. And you could put about 10 tortillas at the same time. And I'm gonna show you how to make a tortilla in a pan. This is a very straightforward griddle that you can find online in stores. And this is most likely what you will use because using clay is very challenging and it's challenging to find it and then it cracks. So I'm gonna show you with a metal one. So here we have our little ball of masa, and I'm gonna show you how to make tortillas in this tortilla press, which I got from my mother when I was learning how to make tortillas, and I've had for years. So it's very important to start with a round ball. This is how you begin. And then you press your 3 middle fingers, and then you make sure that your hands aren't all sticky with masa, because you first press it, and then you need to get it out of the plastic pieces. So you don't want your hands to be sticky. Women who are very experimented in making tortillas make them with their hands like this. And this is called echando tortillas, or like prensando tortillas. And what this piece of equipment helps you do that in a beat. And you want to put it between plastic because otherwise it would get attached to the surfaces. They use, in certain communities, they use banana leaves, but nowadays we use plastic, and it's very commonly used. And I press twice because the press is not even, and most presses are not even. So you need to press twice so that the tortilla comes out even. The pan has nothing. I have added no oil, no butter. It has no fat. So I am pressing enough to make it, you really have to experiment, but I am pressing enough to make it be flat and thin, but you could press less. And now I'm gonna interrupt because I need to move it. So as soon as you see that the edges are drying, you take your tortilla and you flip it over. And this is the beginning of a good tortilla. Because if you let it dry too much on the first side, it's a disaster. So you flip it immediately as soon as you can pick it up, you flip it. And you might use a spatula. You don't need to burn your hands, but actually you get used to not burning your hands pretty soon. Your comal has to be hot enough that water evaporates immediately if you throw water on it. But you also don't want to have it too hot, because if it's too hot, the tortilla will burn instead of cooking. It has to be sort of medium heat. The tortilla cooks 3 times. The first time you put it, then you flip it a first time. And that's the second cooking, which is what's happening now. And that's the longest cooking. It's sort of starting to blister, and it's very subtle. But you see that it wants to raise. They usually say, como la tortilla se quiere levantar. It really is, I'm sorry, because this sounds mysterious and unexplainable, but it starts to blister, and you will learn how to see these blisters. Then you flip it. The more tortillas you make, the better tortilla maker you will become. It's just the art of repetition. So it's ready to blow out. And usually it will do it on its own. But you can also help it by pressing a little bit and making the air get in all the edges. In Mexican towns, they would say that I would be ready to get married, because when your tortilla puffs, you're ready to get married because you can be a housewife and you can make tortillas for your family. This is the proof of the tortilla being cooked. If it doesn't puff up, it's not cooked. And if it doesn't puff up, you either cooked it too long on the first 2 sides, or something went wrong. It needs to puff up to be a successful tortilla. This is perfectly done. It's a little bit golden in the center. This is a perfectly cooked tortilla. And I'm gonna put it in our tortillero here. This is a nice way of keeping them hot. I'm gonna show you how to make another one in the clay comal, and I hope it comes out well. The clay comal is usually used over a big fire. So now we have, this is a home stove, so we have a small source of heat, which just makes it a little bit more tricky. And I'm making another ball of masa, and it's about 1 ounce of masa, which is what we've been using. And I am, again, putting the masa inside our 2 pieces of plastic. You can't use saran wrap. It has to be a plastic that doesn't stick to itself. In this case, it's a compostable bag, but usually thicker plastic is easier. So whatever you have, but as long as it doesn't stick to itself, you will be able to press tortillas in the right way. So here we go, one side, other side. I'm not pressing too much, just enough to make it even. And here we go again. So here I have my spatula, I'm watching the edges. This isn't a perfectly round tortilla, but it's what happens sometimes. So it's good to have mistakes be a part of this lesson. So you see how the edges are a little bit, they're starting to dry. So I'm gonna wait for them to dry a little bit more, just to make sure that we really can pick it up. And I think the comal is hot enough, so I'm gonna do it very slightly. I don't need to really make a big effort. It's very, very subtle. And I'm just flipping it now. You see, the thing is that it doesn't cook evenly because the heat in the stove comes out on the sides. So the center is lacking heat. So that's where it's sticking. But it will work. I promise you it will work. Now you can move it. I'm gonna put it more on the side. Maybe in the case of a comal that is being so fussy as this one, you should put the tortilla towards the side. But you will most likely be using a metal one, and that we've figured out works. Usually comales are full of tortillas. You don't make one at a time. Now I'm taking my time to explain to you every step of the tortilla making. But actually, when you're making tortillas, you wanna be pressing and cooking, and you have to get into a rhythm. This is why tortillas are a master's task. You really, really have to make a lot of them to know how to make them well. So, you press one, put it out. While it's cooking on one side, you're pressing the second one. Sometimes a good tip is to have all your balls and you put a wet towel over them so they don't dry out. It's tricky. It's tricky, and it's a matter of testing and experimenting, and you just want to make sure that you know your comal and that you know at what temperature it actually works. It's rising. This is very good. You see here it's rising on one side. The other side is a little bit dry. You can help yourself by pressing. Pressing it makes them rise more. But here it is. This is a very uneven tortilla, but it rose, and it's now golden browning in the center. So we have a lovely tortilla that we're gonna put in our tortilla keeper, our tortillero, with the rest of our tortillas. Usually, this is the best way to keep tortillas and not slave next to the stove or the comal with tortillas while everybody else is eating. You have them in a closed container. This one has the added benefit of having a hot stone inside, which I can show you because this is a very, very, very hot stone. And you put the cloth over it, and you put the tortillas, and it serves sort of like a little oven. So the oven keeps the tortillas hot, and you can prepare them and then bring them to the table, and they will still be moist and hot and flexible. If you don't have access to a hot stone and a tortillero that looks like this, you can put cloth around the hot tortillas, and you could put a lid over them, for example. You can also put them in a cooler. You put a cloth, nice clean cloth, inside a small cooler, and you keep your tortillas there. Anything that is sort of isolating is what you want for the tortillas to be kept hot. So I'm gonna eat this delicious tortilla. I'm gonna eat this tortilla that we made a little bit ago in this comal. And I'm gonna wrap it and make it just a little taco. And I'm gonna eat it without salt. Usually this you would eat with a little bit of salt. In this case, I chose to go the traditional way and not add any salt to the masa. But there are so many ways in which to prepare your masa. Some people add a little bit of salt to the masa, and that's an easy trick to make tortillas be tastier. A way in which to use this as a utensil is you make a triangle, and you take food, and you eat. It's like a little spoon, and you eat the tortilla while you eat your food. And they're all different ways that we use tortillas for your everyday vehicle of eating anything else. The best way to actually store tortillas for a long time is to freeze them. When they're frozen, you can heat them up and they come out really, really nicely. I would suggest that if it's only for a couple of days, you just put them in the refrigerator, because they do become acidic if you leave them outside. So you need to put them in a container where the temperature is controlled. Make sure that they're sealed so that you don't lose any of the moisture, and then heat them up. If you're not reheating them from the freezer where they have a little bit of the moisture that has frozen around, you may sprinkle a little bit of water on the tortilla to make it not be super dry. Because what you don't want in a tortilla is to have a dry tortilla. Otherwise, you might as well just dry it out and make a tostada, which is something that you will learn later. Making a homemade tortilla just communicates more care into a meal that you're gonna serve. For us Mexicans, it really takes you to so many memories of good meals, because a good meal in Mexico is always accompanied by good tortillas. Salsas are fundamental for Mexicans. Salsas, I would say, are a signature stamp of cooks, of families, of places. Usually when you go to people's homes, they have a sauce that is their home sauce. They have a sauce that their grandmother made, or that their aunt made, or that has been in the family for generations somehow. And I feel the same thing about restaurants. Restaurants have their sauces. And you go to a restaurant or to a taco stand because they have a particular sauce. But it's very telling of a certain way of cooking, or of a certain tradition, a certain family, or a certain locality. So I'm gonna tell you how to make salsa verde cruda. And this is one of my favorite. It's one of my staples at the restaurant. And I love it. You don't cook anything in the sauce. Everything is raw. And this is why it's called salsa verde cruda. Cruda means raw. And this is exactly what it is. So we start with tomatillos. I prefer small tomatillos because the flavor is more concentrated and they're not bitter. And I have some tomatillos here that I want to show you with the skin. This is how they grow. So they grow in the plant. This is a little stem here. And they usually are covered in the skin. If you find them like this, covered, you just clean them, and you do not need to rinse them before you use them. So now what we're gonna do is just finish peeling these, and we are going to prepare this very simple sauce by just putting everything in the blender. So here we go. The tomatillos have a very sticky, sort of gel. It's a light resin that comes from the tomatillo. It's just enough that it gets your fingers dirty. So I will open the blender, put the tomatillos in here, and I put them whole, again, because they're of a very small size. The second ingredient that we're gonna use is this onion, and I'm gonna, again, chop it roughly just so that it goes into the blender and disintegrates easily. And we're gonna put all these clean cilantro leaves. So again, we're gonna do onion, tomatillos, cilantro, serrano chiles. I'm gonna de-stem them and just cut them in half so that they blend easy. Then garlic, and I'm just gonna take the part that might not blend easy, cut it in half. And the secret of the sauce is to put lettuce. And I like to use little gems, or cogollos in Spanish. And it's a very crunchy variety of lettuce. You could use romaine. Sometimes, when you're making salad and you leave the center of the lettuce, this is how I started making the sauce. I use the center of the lettuce to put into a green sauce just to give it a little bit of freshness and crispiness. And now I use little gems just because they're delicious and easy to find, and it's a good way of using up everything and not wasting. So here we have a beautiful avocado. I'm gonna use only half of it. And usually, I don't need to make sure that it's beautifully peeled, but what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna peel it in quarters, and I'm gonna stick it in the blender with everything. The secret for a ripe avocado is that when you touch it lightly, you don't feel a resistance. But you don't want to mush it. You don't want to press it too much so that you make a guacamole inside the avocado, behind the skin. So you just want to make sure that it's ripe enough that you can push into it and you don't feel resistance, because inside it has to be really soft that you can put a spoon into it here very easily. Sometimes the avocado is ripe around the seed, but the edges are very hard. So make sure that the edges are soft. This is exactly what should happen, that you can just take it like this. And again, as we're not gonna waste, we're gonna put this into our sauce, even if our quantities are not perfect. And we are going to put a teaspoon or a spoonful of salt. Maybe this could use a little more. I'm gonna check for flavor after we finish it. And we're just going to blend. We're gonna add no liquid. It's just gonna be the liquid inside the tomatillo. And here we go. And once I see that there are no large cilantro leaves left, I just know that it's ready. Let me see. I want to taste this for salt. Usually, it still needs a little bit more salt. So I'm gonna use one more sort of large pinch. Perfect. Okay. And this is a creamy sauce. The avocado renders sort of guacamole-y consistency. So it's either a light, very spicy guacamole or a very fresh salsa. This is your fresh salsa verde. It's a taste of the tomatillo, the avocado, the serrano, the fragrancy of the cilantro, and it just livens almost any dish that you use it with. So now I'm going to teach you how to make a really simple but delicious and very basic Mexican sauce. You've all probably heard of habanero chiles. These are habaneros. They can come in different colors, and here we have our green habaneros, and this is what makes the sauce interesting. And we're going to do a very fast pickle or lime pickle. In Mexican food, we cook many things with lime. It's a way of preserving raw foods. Habanero is very much a chile of tropical Mexico, so it's important to find ways in which to preserve them. Many times you char habaneros for a salsa. In this case, we're just gonna chop it and put it with onion and lime juice, a little bit of olive oil, just to make it more, a little bit more silky, if you will. And I'm gonna use oregano, which goes very well with the onions and the habanero. So we're gonna start off, we're gonna take half an onion, just because it's enough for this recipe. I wanna show you, I wanna make long pieces of the onion, and I wanna make sure that I get all my slices through to the bottom of the onion. And that's why I cut it in half and I put the onion face down. I want all the pieces of the onion to be separated. I want them all to be marinated in the lime, in the olive oil, and I'm gonna mix them up with the habanero. So here we go. I just wanna make sure that they all separate. You see how these are all nicely separated? What I want is even pieces of the onion so that it can be marinated evenly. In a pickle, what you want to do is cook things to the degree that they can be preserved. And the lime sort of does that. And it's important for you to know that the more this marinates, the more limey it will become. And it isn't a bad thing. It will just be more tasty. So now I'm gonna do the tricky part. I'm gonna chop the habaneros. Just for teaching's sake, people who are very experienced in handling habaneros know that they should not touch any part of their face or body and be very mindful of the oils of the chile because they last. So I recommend using plastic gloves, and this is what I will do. The reality is that habanero does get in the way of every other flavor, and it really can be dangerous, especially if you touch your eyes afterwards. So I am gonna show you how to get an habanero sauce that will not get into your eyes and will just make for a delicious. I like to cut through the habanero perpendicularly so that you get these nice sort of slivers of it. And I want them to be very, very thin, or as thin as you can get them without breaking them like I just did. And I use all of the seeds. I use all of the veins of the habanero. I use every part of the habanero except for the stem. So I'm cutting all the way down there. This is a really spicy chile. Habanero is one of the spiciest chiles, and we're gonna cut through our next chile. Manzanos can also be I recommend using gloves with chiles that you know will be intense. Even if you're chopping a bunch of serrano chiles, or even if you're deveining dry chiles, if you don't want the chile oils to remain in your hands, using gloves can be a good thing. I'm very tactile, I guess, and I love handling food and feeling the consistency and the resistance of the different ingredients in my hands. So I don't like cooking with gloves, but it really is very, not only hygienic, but it's also just protective because you don't want to have spicy fingers. It will get into everything and it lasts for hours. This is a staple salsa that I have at Contramar, and we also have it at Cala in San Francisco. And it makes everything taste really good. And again, I'm putting the seeds, I'm putting everything in there. So, as I have my gloves, I can get in here and separate everything and make sure it's evenly distributed. Now, I'm gonna start using, okay, I'm done with the gloves, thank goodness. I'm gonna put salt. I'm gonna put 2 teaspoons of salt. And then I'm gonna put the oregano, and I'm gonna grind it a little bit with my hands, or just, put it through my fingers so that the aromas start coming out more. Even if you don't do this, you will get the flavor that you want. Then I'm gonna this is freshly squeezed lime juice. I always confuse lime and lemon, but this is lime juice. In Mexico, this is limon. So it's difficult for me to think of this as lime and not lemon. And I'm gonna put the same amount of lime juice that I just put in olive oil. So here we go. And I'm just gonna mix this so that it sits. And this is your sauce. We're ready to eat it now. And if you let it sit for about 20 minutes before using it to dress anything or to go on any taco, it's perfect. And again, this could last for 2 weeks in your refrigerator. So now I'm just gonna let it sit here. You can leave it as is. You could put it in a quart container. You can cover it and wait to use it in 2 days, or you can serve it immediately. I'm just gonna have it sit in the bowl where I'm gonna present it. This habanero onion sauce is called a salsa brava, and I recommend it with tacos al pastor for sure. I would recommend it with so many things. Sopes, seafood, tostadas. It's also beautiful, and depending on the color of the habanero, you get a different salsa every time, because habaneros tend to have a variation of colors, yellows, greens, oranges, and it's just a nice salsa, and it's very fragrant. The dry oregano, when it's enlivened by the olive oil and the lime, it's really delicious. So this can be made with white onions, and it can also be made with red onions, which are very typical from the lands where habanero grows. And this I just did with white onion because this is what we did at Contramar when we opened it, and we still have the same salsa. I am going to teach you how to make al pastor. Al pastor is a marinade that we usually in Mexico use with pork meat, but it has now become so popular. It's a very Mexico City thing. And it's basically a rub. It starts off with chiles, and I have these chiles here. We have chile ancho, chile pasilla, chile guajillo, chile de árbol, chile cascabel. I'm going to devein these, so we destem them and take the seeds out. This is gonna avoid the sauce from being extra spicy. I mean, it's gonna have its flavor, but it's not gonna be as spicy. Isn't this lovely? This is a rattle chile. It's called cascabel, which is a rattle, because it rattles. I would not recommend that you give it to your baby, but it is a really nice rattle. But your hands will be very, very, very dangerously spicy if you touch this. The name comes from how they look, right? Pasilla, it's like a raisin. Anyway, so I am gonna swap this for a set of chiles that have already been destemmed, and I'm gonna put them in the comal that has already been heated, and I'm gonna toast them for a little bit as the base for our al pastor sauce. And I'm just gonna leave it a little bit over the comal. The toasting of the chiles allows for them not to be rubbery, so it's gonna be easier to grind them. But I just want them, oof, it's so nice. The aromas coming out of the chiles are delicious. And make sure that you have an exhaust. That's enough. I am using a comal. If you don't have a comal, you can use a regular pan. I'm gonna liberate the aromas, and you wanna make them less rubbery. The ancho actually can take more, so I'm gonna leave that one to the end. Then we're gonna open our blender. Here we go. Okay, we're gonna put all our chiles. I'm gonna put the whole tomato. I'm not even gonna bother taking out the core. These are all the ingredients. You have them on the list. And it's a very straightforward marinade that we use for everything. At the restaurant, we use it. You can have it at your home and use it for different things that you're gonna cook. It holds up, so you can actually keep it in the fridge for a little bit. I'm gonna just make sure that you have the garlic is in huge pieces. Then I'm gonna take out a few of the seeds. So al pastor is a recipe that is very typical of Mexico City, but it actually comes from the meat being roasted on a spit, and a marinade that uses ingredients from the southeast of Mexico, from the lands of tropical Yucatan. And we use a paste of anato, achiote paste. I'm gonna put a little bit of the orange juice in the achiote paste just so that it dissolves a little bit better. And I'm gonna use a spoon for this. And I'm just gonna let it sit there for a little bit. So on the streets of Mexico, you find many iterations of al pastor. Al pastor is a very traditional dish of Mexico City. It's actually, people have talked about al pastor as the dish of Mexico City food. And it's a street food. If people go for tacos on the street, al pastor, nobody has a spit in their house except for if they're having a big party with more than 100 people, which happens in Mexico. But you usually do not have people cooking this at home. So what I'm giving you is a proportion that is easy to make at home and that you can keep at home and that you can make sure to finish at home. Usually the al pastor spits are huge and you have, you can feed 1,000 people with a trompo, or maybe 500 people with a trompo. But I truly recommend having this at home because it makes any dish delicious and tasty, and it has this little tangy orange that dissolves the anato, the achiote paste, and it's a little bit sweet, it's a little bit salty. I put cumin, I put oregano, I put a little bit of salt, I put the chiles that you saw, and this orange juice. I'm just squeezing these oranges as we go because I'm just using one of them. And it has garlic, onion, tomato, a little bit of grapeseed oil just to give it some unctuosity. You want it to be nice and smooth, so you can rub it on meat or you can rub it on fish. We're gonna make our tacos al pastor with pork shoulder, and I'll show you. It's the simplest thing to marinate these. Al pastor has been considered like a Mexico City staple dish for quite some years, and it comes from the influence of the shawarma because the meat is cooked on a spit that rotates, and it's really cooked just the same as shawarma. So I guess it's our Middle Eastern, specifically Lebanese influence in this country, which is great. Okay, so everything is in the blender, and I'm gonna start blending it. This is a very modern Vitamix. A really good blender is basic for the chiles. I really recommend that you invest in a good blender for this sauce. Beautiful. Okay, and here we've just attained a really lovely silky sauce. You can smell the acidity of the onion, the garlic, the orange, blended with the achiote, which gives it the color. And the chiles, you want the chiles to be disintegrated. You want the chiles to be you want it to be as smooth as possible. You can go on and have it be even smoother, but you don't really need it to be smoother. Every particle is very small. What is important about al pastor is that whatever meat you use is very well marinated in this sauce. You want all of the meat or all of the vegetables to really get that acidity, get that flavor, the smokiness of the chiles. So I usually leave meat, especially, at least 24 hours in the fridge, and you just let it sit, make sure that it's well mixed. This is our pork shoulder, and I am going to take a little bit of this. I'm gonna take about 3 tablespoons from here, and I'm just gonna marinate this in this sauce. And we're gonna keep the rest of the sauce. We're gonna make more recipes with it. And also you can keep it at home. It keeps for about 3 weeks in the fridge. It's absolutely very long lasting. And I recommend that you do one batch and you use it up for other things. This is a portion for about 4 people. And for the time being, this is enough. We're gonna put this in the fridge, and we're gonna store the rest of the sauce, the remaining sauce, for other recipes. And as I said, you can use it for so many things, for vegetables, for fish, for potatoes, sweet potatoes. You can bake it, you can cook it on the grill. I'll show you how to finish up the al pastor in just a bit. So here we have the marinated pork. It's been sitting 24 hours in the fridge, and it's ready. Smells delicious. You have the little orange tang that helps it all come together. And now I'm gonna do the staple of al pastor is pineapple. Of all things, pineapple. They use a pineapple to put at the top and at the bottom of the spit. So the flavor of the pineapple, sort of the juices of the pineapple make the meat a little bit sweet. And for home use, and even at the restaurant, when you don't have a spit, what you can do is just cook the pineapple with a little bit of butter and salt. And this is what we're gonna do right now. Tips on how to cut a pineapple are really variable. People cut pineapples in so many different ways. Like in Hawaii, they do it one way. And depends on the size of the pineapple. This is a huge pineapple. So what I would do is I would cut the edge of it, and then I'm gonna cut through the peel of it. It has all these stems. They look like stems. But it doesn't matter if you leave a little bit of it for this al pastor preparation that we're gonna make. I recommend using a very sharp knife because the peel of the pineapple is tough. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut it in half. And as I said, you do need a sharp knife because otherwise you'll go astray. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna reserve this for later. And I'm gonna cut. When I'm cutting pineapple, I like to cut it lengthwise because then you get the sweetest part and the part that isn't as sweet. In the case of this recipe, we're gonna use just a little bit for the quantity of pork that we have. I'm gonna take out the heart, the central part, which is tougher. You don't want that in the concoction that we're preparing. And I want to show you how to get triangles of pineapple. And if you get a little bit of a dark part, I would take it out just so that you get nice, clean pieces. I have always been curious of how the pineapple came to be such an important part of the al pastor preparation. And my theory, it's not clear. Everybody says it's because of the flavor, it's because of the sweetness, because the pineapple is a sweet fruit and the pastor is kind of tangy and sweet and spicy also, but I believe the pineapple is also used just to hold up the meat on the spit. You have a piece of the pineapple at the top, you have a piece of the pineapple at the bottom, and the juices do render, the sweetness, but I think it's also an instrument for holding it up. So what I'm gonna do here is I believe we have, okay, I'll just finish this here. I want to make sure that we have enough pineapple for this meat, and I think this is more than enough. And I'm gonna turn my fire on. So I am gonna put a little bit of butter in the pan. I want the butter to give the pineapple a little bit of the fat that it usually has, because the way that you eat an al pastor is you put a tortilla, and then you put the meat, and then you put a slice or a little piece of the pineapple. But the pineapple is usually already, it has the fat of the meat. So butter is a good alternative for it, and I've found that it really gives it a very good flavor. So I'm gonna leave the pineapple with the butter. This is what we do at the restaurant because, as I said, we don't have a spit in every restaurant. I add butter, a little bit of salt, and that is it. Pinch of salt. So this is gonna cook for about 15 to 20 minutes. And once this is ready and the pineapple is cooked and softened and the butter is really in there, we can add it to our al pastor preparation. Here we have our pineapple that has reduced and gotten really, really yellow. You can see that now it's ready for being put over an al pastor taco. I'm gonna turn this heat off and I am gonna proceed to our meat. We're gonna salt our meat a little bit more because what I put in the marinade was very little salt. And it actually takes about 1 tablespoon of salt. And the only thing I did was 2 pinches. So I'm gonna mix it up again. The reason I put the salt at the end is so that the meat doesn't lose its liquid. If you salt it too much at the beginning when you let it marinate, it's gonna brine it more than just marinate it. It's gonna take a lot of the liquid out of the meat. So I want it to be nice and moist, and this is why I salt it right before I put it on the pan. Okay, so I am gonna mix it up, and you can do it with your hands. It's just they're gonna get really red, and the achiote gets under your nails, and I prefer not to have that happen. So I'm gonna mix it up with my spoon. And while the pan gets ready, here we are, it's starting to get hot. I'm gonna use grapeseed oil so that the meat doesn't stick. And you can see when the pan is hot, it starts immediately spreads out and the oil looks even thinner. So I would heat the pan, put the oil, make sure that the oil does not burn. The grapeseed oil has a high smoke point, but you don't want to overdo it. So as soon as you know that the pan is hot and you can see that the oil is sort of spreading around, you put your meat in. Try not to make a splash. And here we go. I am cooking this meat at a medium-high level. I usually use a pan that's thicker. I like cooking meat in a pan that is thicker. This is a fast cook because the pork is already sliced thin, so you don't need a lot of heat to make it all be cooked through. You do want pork to be cooked through. Specifically in the case of pork and chicken or turkey, you want it to be cooked through. We're getting a lovely, very attractive, delicious smelling, reddened, not too red, pork meat. Some al pastor really overdo it with achiote. Some pastor taquerias also use food coloring because they want them to be red, red, red. I don't necessarily want them to be that red, so I don't want to over season it with achiote. I feel it's a very balanced marinade. I am going to put this off, turn this off because it's ready. Achiote is the seed called anato, and it comes from the Yucatan Peninsula. And you grind it. It's a spice that is very common there. It's sort of a pepper, and it's made into a paste with usually a little bit of vinegar or orange juice. But when it's made to last, they use a vinegar. I find that the paste, if you have a good purveyor of the paste, is good enough. If you want to do it from scratch, if you want to make it from scratch and grind your own achiote, then you will be sure of the traceability of your sauce. So I've cooked the pork for about 7 minutes. You don't want to overcook it because if you overcook it, it's going to get tough. And it smells really good. Between the pork meat and the fat and the anato and all the spices that we put into the sauce, the aroma is really enticing. So we're almost ready to plate. We're gonna let it sit for a minute while I heat the tortillas, and then we're gonna plate our delicious tacos. So now we're ready to heat up our tortillas that we made earlier. And the way we're gonna do this is, again, we're gonna use our clay comal. And this is a little bit hot. It's gonna get hot very soon. I'm just gonna put I'm gonna make 3 tacos. I like uneven numbers for food. I don't know why. Usually tacos are sold individually. And people ask for 5 tacos, 4 tacos, 6 tacos, 2 tacos. I like to plate 3. So this is what I'm gonna do. So the comal is just heated. It's the same comal that we made the tortillas on. You don't add oil, you don't add anything, you don't need to. We're putting our tortillas on the plate. We're making it ready here. We're adding a little bit of the meat on each taco. And this meat looks really delicious. I like to put enough meat that you have a bite in each bite. And, sometimes people use 2 tortillas. It's very common for the al pastor tortilla to be very thin. So sometimes people use 2 tortillas. And this meat will yield for about, I would say, 8 tacos of this capacity. Maybe a little less because I'm being quite generous with it. I'm gonna put a little bit of the pineapple on each taco. I would put about 3 pieces on each. Again, my uneven number thing, I don't know why I have it. I just think food looks nicer that way. And then we're gonna add cilantro and onion. And cilantro and onion are a staple of Mexican street food for sure. So we have very finely chopped raw white onion, and we're putting a little bit of that over the meat. And then we're gonna put a little bit of cilantro. And this is just cilantro leaves, very finely chopped. We're gonna serve it with our salsa verde cruda, which is a raw green sauce. And we're gonna accompany it with some lime. There you go, 1 lime per taco. And I am gonna prepare myself this taco. Usually I like to put sauce on the side so that everybody decides how much sauce to put on their taco. I am choosing the salsa verde cruda for this al pastor recipe because it adds freshness. It's really sort of vibrant and intense, but not heavy, which really balances the meat. So here we go. This is a big taco. I would recommend using a little bit less meat, but it's gonna be a very good bite. I have to say, this salsa verde is really badass. So good. So this taco is a really delicious bite of sort of sweet, sour, spicy, meaty, fresh, and very bright taste of Mexico City for me. It really tastes of Mexico City. And this is, this tastes clean. Some tacos are a little bit more fatty, have a little bit more burnt edges, so they have a little bit more of smokiness. But this is a really good bite. The only rule for eating a taco is that once you have it ready, you don't put it down, you just finish it. I have a theory that truly anything can be a taco. And with this heritage of mine, I remember that one of my favorite tacos growing up was butter and anchovy paste, which is non-traditional Mexican for sure, or butter and jam, or we even made peanut butter and jelly tacos. Or a spaghetti, like leftover spaghetti taco, which is the most absurd concept. But a good tortilla can hold anything. My favorite taco is a salad taco. And I'm giving you the recipe for a really good salad to put into a taco. It's nopales and watercress, and you'll get that in the recipe book. As long as the tortilla is good, go ahead and experiment.